Hey everybody, welcome back to day 3 of our 5-day devotional with the golden mouth preacher himself, St. John Chrysostom. Today we're looking at the story where all of the disciples are in the boat and Jesus has gone ahead and he sent them on into the waters, and all of a sudden a storm arose. And so everything's getting crazy, but Jesus isn't with them. And then finally Jesus shows up, but he begins walking on the waters, and the disciples don't recognize that it's Jesus who is actually walking towards them. So now in their eyes, the situation has gone from bad to worse. They're in the midst of a storm, and then to their eyes, there's now a creepy ghost walking towards them. Well, let's see what St. John Chrysostom has to say about this passage and then how it can apply to our present situation. Watch what he says right here. When he, speaking of Jesus, is on the point of removing our terrors, he brings it upon us other worse things and more alarming. Therefore, neither did he remove the darkness, nor straightway make himself manifest or make himself known, training them, as I said, by the continuance of these fears and instructing them to be ready to endure. So what is St. John saying right there? He's saying that the disciples were already in a bad situation and Jesus just kind of let it happen. Then he shows up on the water and he actually lets the bad situation get worse by not making himself immediately known, but by letting the disciples believe that he is a crazy ghost that's appearing to them in the situation and appearing to them in the storm. But St. John says that there is a reason God let the situation go from bad to worse, because he was teaching the disciples to endure. That as things got worse, God was actually preparing them to power through tough situations. God was preparing them to go through something really difficult, to go through something that produced a lot of fear and anxiety and worry. In fact, they thought we're going to die and we're going to be haunted by this spirit. God let them go through a terrible and a dark situation, a situation getting worse, because it was preparing them to just power through, to go through difficult times, to go through worry and fear and anxiety. But what did this all produce? Watch what he says right here. Christ did not discover or reveal himself before they cried out. For the more intense their alarm, the more did they welcome his coming. Did you catch that? St. John is telling us that the reason that Jesus let their situation get worse and worse and worse, the reason he didn't reveal who he was in the midst of the storm immediately, is because when he finally revealed himself, they welcomed him more and more. The reason that Jesus let the situation get bad is because he was teaching them to endure situations and then to welcome Jesus more and more, to love Jesus more and more, to recognize their dependence on Jesus when he finally showed up. I think as we're in the midst of this crazy world panic right now, that we're experiencing a pandemic, that COVID-19 is sort of taking over our world, and there's all kinds of fear and anxiety with that. There's a scary reality that this may get worse before it gets better. That this may get more intense before it gets better. That there may be more people who get sick. Sadly, more people who may pass away. The economy may get worse. There may be people, even yourself, who lose your job before it gets better. But is there a reason in all of this? Is God cruel, or is God teaching us through this? In fact, St. John says God isn't cruel, but he's teaching us. He's teaching us patience and endurance. He's training us to be able to get through fearful times. But not only is he training us for patience, he's teaching us to love him more and more. That as God takes away all of the options, that as God allows us to go through a situation in which we're losing all hope, we will actually learn to be more and more dependent on him. When we lose all control, we will cast ourselves upon Jesus. And when Jesus finally shows up in the midst of this crisis, which He will. We will actually learn to love Him and to care for Him, to serve Him more deeply, because we went all of that time where it seems like He was nowhere to be found. In the midst of this crisis, allow God to teach you that you desperately need Him in every single moment. Allow God to teach you how to get through fear and anxiety and crisis, knowing that He's going to show up always on time, that He's in control. Here's my question for you. Where was your relationship with Jesus before this crisis? Did you love Him? Had you cast yourself on Him? Did you trust Him with every area of your life? Or did you find that you were the one in control? Allow God to teach you in the midst of this situation that you can get through hard times and that you don't need to live life on your own, but you need to cast yourself on Jesus, that He is in control, that He is always on time, that He is the one that we need to live our lives for. Jesus may not show up when we want Him to, but He's going to show up when we need Him to. Allow Him to train you and teach you, and allow yourself to grow in your dependence and relationship on Jesus through these scary and these dark times. I love you. I'm praying for you. We're going to get through this together. Allow Jesus to teach you, and let's come out better on the other side.